If you happen to follow me on Twitter, if you're so inclined, at Craig Allen FNP, I sent the tweet out a couple of days ago because if you told me in 2020 that these two guys would end up fighting in the next 2 years, they'd be 3-2 and they're 5-on-in, I would have called you crazy. But that's what we're getting this weekend. My guy out of Slovakia, it is Ludwig Klein, making the move up to 155, replacing Ghost Pepper Eric Gonzalez to take on King Kage Devonte Smith, and it is a surprise to me as it probably is to many because it's an odd fight. I mean, for Ludwig Klein, he came in with a lot of hype, making his UFC debut on an Israel Adesanya card who was taking on Paulo Costa, and you know Izzy cards, there's usually plenty of city kickboxing guys. Well, Shane Young comes in, and yeah, sometimes at the weigh-ins he does the haka, and it's pretty cool, but in that fight, Ludwig Klein just went to his bread and butter. He went to the mill. He threw that high kick with his left foot, ends up connecting, bang, 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 and the fight's over.
So
and for
nice.
Klein, it's like, man, this guy is already living up to his potential. He's a potential ranked featherweight. We absolutely love what we've seen out of him. So for Klein, he takes his next fight against Mike Trizano. And listen, he loses that fight on the judges' scorecards. It's a loss on his record. We consider it a loss. Again, some losses are a little bit more chintzy than others. MMA decisions, if you look at it, 3 people scored at 29-28 Trizano, 11 scored at 29-28 Klein. Depends on what you view in terms of the effectiveness of the takedowns of Klein versus the boxing of Trizano. But again, we can consider that fight a wash. This is Ludwig Klein's first losing streak of his pro career because he went out his last time out against Nate Landwehr as a big favorite. He was a minus 390 favorite. Burn me, burn you, burned everybody. He got beat in every round, and in the third round, he got sloppy and he got submitted, and it just looks so bad from a guy that we had such high praise for coming into the UFC.
I love Mike Wilbon. I don't know if you do, but I'm a really big fan of Mike Wilbon. I really do. And he has this one saying that I really appreciate, and it's, if he's who I think he is, he'll do X, Y, or Z. If Ludwig Klein is who we thought he was going to be, he should beat Devonte Smith this weekend. But then again, he should have beat Nate Landwehr his last time out if he was who we thought he was. And that's what I do worry about with Ludwig Klein, because he's one of these fighters who the highs are very high, but the lows can sometimes be very low.
Apparently.
Exactly. And he's slowly falling into that sort of, and it's wild that we're going to bring him up because he also fights on this card. He's falling into that like Michael Oleksiejczuk category where it's, hey, if we want to talk about the positives, you're going to think this guy's insane. But we can talk about all the negatives too, and then you're going to be concerned. And the weird thing about Klein is, I'm very concerned, I guess, as to what game plan he's going to have coming into this fight. Because for Devonte Smith, yes, we worry about his durability. Yes, we worry about his sort of, maybe not inactivity on the feet, but he can get out-volumed at some points. At least we know what his overall package is. We know he likes to work behind the jab. He has thunderous leg kicks, especially when he works behind them. We know what his skill set's going to be and how he's going to apply it in the cage. With Klein, I'll be very curious to see if he's going to use the takedown, how early he's going to use the takedown, if he's going to want to keep it at kicking range, because that's my big key to this fight. Ludwig Klein has phenomenal kicks. Again, like you said, watch the Shane Young fight. That knockout is awesome. I highly recommend going back and watching it, because he stuns him with a head kick, flurries on him, great finish. If Klein keeps this fight at that range, it's almost doing Devonte Smith a massive favor, because that's where Smith can get a lot of his own great techniques off. That's where his jab's very effective, that's where his leg kick's very effective, and that's where you start to accumulate a lot of his just volume strikes overall throughout this fight. But if Klein starts to struggle at that longer range, he's going to be forcing himself to shoot takedowns from a really long distance, and that could help Devonte Smith set up his own power shots, because we were saying before we even started filming, I really like Devonte Smith's jab. He's very accurate with it, and he can put a really good amount of damage on someone with it. Look at the Justin James fight, finishes them with doctor stoppage. He doesn't set up his power shots all that well with the jab, though. But with Klein and with his either all the way out or all the way in style, I do think he could be doing Devonte Smith a favor by almost telegraphing his entries.
I have some issues with this fight, so let those be known. For Ludwig Klein, on his 2-fight losing streak, he made the move over to the States, which makes sense. You want to get fights, you start training in the States. So he started training at Sanford MMA, which can be a godsend for some fighters. And for some fighters, when they leave their home gym and they go to a giant gym, they get lost in the shuffle, they get out of their patterns, they end up losing. So for Klein, seems like he's training back at home, and I want to make sure I get it right, at Spartacus Fight Gym. So I'm interested to see how that pays off, because he was winning when he was there before.
The flip side, though, is, and we have to say this. Volkan Oezdemir was awesome when he was at Sanford MMA, and then ever since he hasn't been training there, we haven't really seen the same version of him.
Again, there's
I know,
sides to both coins, but for Klein, he came out on the losing end out of both of those fights. The other thing is, again, I can talk about the good. So the left kick to the body, left kick to the head. You like Charles Jourdain, you like Ludwig Klein. The bad about Ludwig is the fact that his patience. Sometimes he can just get caught, and he just stands there, and he moves his hands, and he walks forward, and he does nothing. Not like his opponent does a whole lot in those moments,
sure.
But Ludwig Klein takes long periods of time off where he's just trying to download a game plan. It's how you lose rounds in the UFC. He also has a weird, step-in right hand, and I love that, actually. Like, when you're coming in here and you just take a step forward, toss that left hand in there. We saw that against Shane Young. We saw that against Mike Trizano. It is one of his best moves. Again, patience, it can be a virtue. It can be a key to victory. It can be a key to a loss. I have that as actually a good and a bad. But the bad, so you're a wrestler now. Ludwig Klein wrestling against Devonte Smith is a path to a loss. It really is. I mean, Devonte Smith against Justin James was able to win out in those wrestling exchanges in a big way. Justin James is a good wrestler. If he's anything, he's a good wrestler that got, a little bit enamored with his handiwork. But for Devonte Smith, that was a giant win for him. Again, the bad... Sometimes Ludwig Klein has really late reactions on kicks. It's something that I don't necessarily like from a primary kickboxer. So for Klein, love the guy. I love his fights, especially on the regional scene, especially in that win that he had in the UFC. But we got to kind of marry the good with the bad when it comes to this fight. So I look at this one, Devonte Smith, again, we haven't really seen giant progressions in his game fight over fight. It really has been pitter-patter behind the jab. And it's not just a regular MMA jab. It's not just one. It can be 1-2. It can be we're tripling up on the jab. It's something that I like to see. Something that a Jason Perillo would like to see. Like, I really do love that in MMA. When you do that, you can be a little susceptible to the kicks, though, when you live behind that game.
And I think we have to throw Devonte Smith into sort of a Derek Brunson-esque category to where... he's not fragile. You just worry about him where he eats a power shot. Because Devonte Smith has not shown the ability to eat multiple power shots over and over in a fight. Like, Marcelo Rojo might not be the best example of this, but I'm still going to use it anyways. He might not have had the best run in the UFC, especially not against Kyler Phillips, but... he's at least shown the ability to where you can hit him multiple times really hard and he doesn't go down after the first one. With Devonte Smith, the second he eats one big shot, you're a little worried about his legs going from under him. And I think that has to be said because no matter how much success he has early, and that's sort of why I throw him into a Brunson kind of category, because with Derek Brunson, it's like, wow, 2.5 rounds in, going to be fighting for a title the next time out, and the next thing you know, he gets finished. That's something I worry about with Smith. Again, Jamie Mullarkey, not a bad striker by any means, but the second he got inside of Smith's range, he was really able to put it on him. And then if you go back just 2 fights before against Kama Worthy, and again, Kama Worthy and Jamie Mullarkey aren't the highest level strikers ever, and the Worthy fight was weird. I know we've talked about it quite a bit on this channel, about how they were friends, they were...
Joe Rogan was getting mad about it. They were playing touch butt in the park.
Yeah, and he got knocked out. And that was a weird fight. You might want to throw that one out. And even if you do, I can't fault you for it. But it doesn't give him any more credit when we talk about his chin and his overall durability. But I do think this could be a really fun fight. And I like a lot of the points you brought up about Ludwig Klein and his overall just sort of reactionary style. And that's why I do think I have to pick Devonte Smith in this fight. Just because when these guys are at the longest of their ranges, Klein is going to be looking to set up his power shots, which is weird because oddly enough, I do think Klein might be the more dangerous guy on the feet, and maybe that speaks a little bit more to Smith and my questions with his chin. But I do think when they're at the longest of their ranges, Smith's going to be looking for a lot of jabs, going to be looking for a lot of leg kicks, whereas Klein will be trying to set up his power shots, and that's why I like Devonte Smith. If you go in looking for a knockout, you normally leave losing by decision, so that's why the prediction is going to be Devonte Smith.
Devonte Smith is 1-0 in the UFC against Southpaws. He took on Julian Erosa. I think that was second time in the UFC, Julian Erosa, and he was getting ready for a bit of a jack-of-all-trades brawler in Eric Gonzalez. But when I look at this one, Klein, again, a guy to succeed at range who's shorter, typically smaller, though, again, bodied up on Instagram, so you do like to see that, so I'm not necessarily concerned about the weight cut. At a reach disadvantage, Devonte Smith's a weird guy for lightweight, because he's not the tallest guy. He has a freakish reach to him. And you like to see that, especially with the extension on those power shots. So again, could I see Ludwig Klein getting through the guard, kicking him, wobbling him, and then getting a finish? 100% I could. I had a lot of promise like a lot of people did in Ludwig Klein. He was one of my guys to watch just, a year ago, 2 years ago? But at this point, I do like Devonte Smith in this fight for the reasons that, again, a great L-step, good boxing in general. You love to see that out of his game plan. But his X factor can be his wrestling, a spot for where Ludwig Klein, I haven't seen it against not even elite competition. I haven't seen it against unranked UFC competition where it's succeeded for him. Hopefully that gym at Spartacus has been able to kind of mold him back into the fighter that we knew and loved coming into the UFC. This is one of my favorite fights coming up this weekend, but for me, and for both of us, we're going with Devonte Smith in this one. You let us know down below in the comments section who you have, and if you're thrown off by the fact that we didn't talk about the Tapology votes, who, 66% have Smith, or the odds, because we don't have odds yet. Eric Gonzalez just fell out of this fight, so keep that conversation going down below in the comments. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say.
Let's get into it.